Welcome back to the channel, RacerX here, and I am back with my good buddies at the Hopper Motorplex in McKinney, Texas, because I have got a super cool, very rare car that I'm ready to show you guys today, do a little bit of a review on it. One of my favorite cars growing up. I got my hands on one today, and it should be a ton of fun. If you guys are new to my channel, please do me a big, gigantic favor. Please hit subscribe. You can find now right down there on the bottom, and we are off. So here is the car that I have really been wanting to show you. Look how gorgeous that thing is. That is a 2002 Gen 2 Dodge Viper. These guys are extremely hard to find, especially in really, really good condition. Check out the color scheme on that. And even though this car is 20 years old, you want to talk about a car that leaves a serious statement. It just makes a statement on the road in terms of just a road presence. Very few cars make a statement like one of these jokers. And ever since I was a kid, I've absolutely loved the Dodge Viper, and I love the Gen 2 so much more than I love the first generation. So I want to show you a little bit more about this thing. Now this, of course, is the GTS. I actually like the GTS better than the RT, which is the convertible. This one is slightly taller by, I think, about 4 inches, but still only like 47 inches tall. This thing does not sit very high. Now the owner, the previous owner, did do some aftermarket things to this car. You can see we have beautiful HRE wheels on here. This is not a standard feature, and neither is the wing in the back. But I mean, just look at the sweeping lines on this car. Absolutely gorgeous. They kind of took what they did with the Gen 1 and just made it that much better. Now they do say that these door sills here get very, very hot when you drive it. You got the exhaust kind of coming through here, but then of course you have center exhaust in the back of this. Gorgeous looking wing on the back of this car, very aggressive. I love the obviously exhaust right here. I just kind of love this lip right here. If you take a look at from this angle, it does kind of make a little bit of an interesting shape, and I've always loved that about the Viper. And then from this angle, there's no other car that looks like this. I mean, just check that out, how gorgeous that is. I am a huge fan of this. I love the racing stripes on it. Absolutely beautiful. So what else makes the Dodge Viper so special? Well, here you have it. That is a big 8-liter V10 under the hood of this, 450 horsepower, 490 pound-feet of torque. And we know that in the later generations, that continued to go up. Vipers have always been only manual and, of course, naturally aspirated. They never had a boosted Viper. Of course, you could do it aftermarket. We saw lots of really fast cars like that. But check out these gorgeous kind of dual intakes here. I love the red. Obviously, on the top of this thing, you've got the intakes here that are all painted red. A very, very pretty engine inside this thing. It sounds absolutely amazing, the Dodge Viper does. I love how it's just kind of a shell that kind of wraps around the engine here. They did do some things with the hood to try and keep this big monster a little bit cooler, because it does put out a lot of heat. So when you look at the actual hood of this car, you can see you've got some vents here. You've also got these bad boys right up here, which I really love. And a telltale sign of the Generation 2 Viper is that joker right there. And of course, that is a functional intake there as well. So a very nice design from Dodge. So when we go to look at the interior of the Dodge Viper, it is not exactly a big place to sit. So you can see even the doors have kind of a unique shape to them here. And then when you get onto the inside of this, obviously we know it is only a 2-passenger vehicle. It has kind of a big center section right here in the middle. And then of course you do have a manual transmission here. This is a Tremec. It is an older Tremec. I believe it's a T56 in this, which, you know, they did a lot of refinement on later. But you can see you've got some your basic gauges here. Remember, this car is over 20 years old. You've got some other gauges here. It is a little weird to see your fuel gauge over there in the middle, but that's the way this car was designed. This one actually has an aftermarket stereo in it. Not a ton of bells and whistles on the Dodge Viper. You got your windows up and down, which is a little weird because they're in the middle. You do have there's no glove box in this car either, guys, so keep that in mind. You just have your airbag over there. Even the way you open the door is a little bit different in this car. And of course, you got your manual and stuff back here. And a little bitty area right here, I guess, if you wanted to store something in. Not a very big area, but a big center console. Very comfy seats in the Dodge Viper as well, but just not a ton of room in it. And just like I said, not a ton of bells and whistles to the Dodge Viper. So the Dodge Viper does have a little bit of space in the back of it. As you can see, we've actually got a fire extinguisher back here, but kind of an interesting little spot here. I love the little carpet in the back of this, but you can put a couple of bags back in the back of the Dodge Viper. The glass just pops right up. And it kind of looks like it has the shape of a wheel back here, so you could put a spare tire back here if you wanted to for a road trip as well. So a little bit of a functional space in the Dodge Viper. And being that this is a hand-built supercar, Dodge was not shy about putting Vipers all over the car. You can see one there. As we jump around the side, you've got the Viper right there. Of course, we can jump over here to the engine bay. You've got a Viper right there. No mistaking, you've got a Viper on the door. We've got a Viper here. You've got a Viper back here. I absolutely love this badge, by the way. But another one over here. So yeah, it's pretty hard to miss that this is a Dodge Viper. So here is the seating position inside the 2002 Dodge Viper GTS. And yes, it is pretty tight in here. You can see you've got your gauges. Of course, you've got more gauges over here in the center, kind of a telltale Viper characteristic. And then, of course, we do have the aftermarket stereo here, too. You've got your center vents. And then, of course, down here, you've got your climate controls, things like that as well, kind of where you'd expect. Now, window controls there in the middle, as I mentioned, kind of different. You do have an eject button in case your passenger happens to be pissing you off. Also, you've got this little joker right here, which is kind of cool. You could just kind of lift that up. Not a whole lot going on with that. Of course, manual transmission, and definitely a different feel to this transmission. It is a little bit cumbersome, to say the least. A big e-brake here in the middle. And of course, you're sitting pretty close to your passenger over here as well. But a nicely appointed interior, not a ton of bells and whistles on the Dodge Viper. And as I mentioned, you do have the little storage area here in the middle. And once again, another Viper emblem there. So now sitting in the Dodge Viper, I have to say, when you start it up, it still kind of just tugs at my heartstrings a little bit, listening to that V10 under the hood. A lot of little quirky things with the Viper. I will mention that. I mean, from the way you open the hood to the glass, like I said, it's not a ton of bells and whistles in here. Heck, the seatbelt is actually over here to my right instead of my left. That's different as well. No traditional glove box, as I mentioned. There's just a lot of different stuff about the Dodge Viper, but that's kind of what makes it special. So the inside of the Viper is not exactly for you if you are someone who's claustrophobic. There is a little bit of headroom here. I've kind of got the seat moved down pretty far. I can see out of the car actually pretty well, which is nice. But I will say the doors are very close to you. As a matter of fact, my shoulders are basically touching the door, and it kind of sweeps in towards my knees. It is just a very tight feel inside of the Viper. And even though it has a fairly sizable center section here, the car really does literally wrap around you. There's not a ton of room in here. If you're somebody who does not like small spaces, you will not like the inside of a 2002 Dodge Viper. I will say, as I'm getting to drive this, it doesn't really feel refined at all, and that's the truth of it. And that's kind of the honest truth about a lot of Vipers like this. They're just not a super refined car. The engine sounds fantastic, just listen to it. But the transmission in the thing, it feels pretty cumbersome, to be honest with you. It's kind of hard to shift gears in it. It's real short. It's not, the engine doesn't come on like super hard and firm. The clutch pedal is pretty hard to push in. It's not a real soft clutch. You got to really kind of want to push the clutch down in this, and you got to really want to shift gears in this. But at the end of the day, it's still fun to drive for some reason. I'm still really enjoying being behind the wheel of this fire-breathing V10. And yeah, I realize it's only the second gen of 5 generations of Vipers, and I've driven most of them. Never driven a Gen 2 to this point. And yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to a Viper other than the fact it's basically a sledgehammer, but that still has the ability to put a huge smile on my face. I really like this. Now, there are not a lot of nannies built into the Dodge Viper, and I think Dodge kind of wanted it that way. I mean, this thing was really meant to be just a sledgehammer of a car, and that's really what it is. So they said, leave the nannies out. We're just going to make a big V10 torque monster, and we've got the driver mod factor in place, and that is about it. And there's something great about that. The issue with that was that a lot of people who just aren't very good at driving manage to wreck these cars because they do tend to get a little bit light in the rear end, even with the massive tires in the back. One of the things I absolutely love about Vipers, they have these huge tires in the back, and it gives it one hell of a stance when you look at the car from behind. But unfortunately, these cars do tend to get a little bit light under acceleration in the rear, and if you don't know what you're doing, bad things can happen. Now, another thing I will mention about Vipers in general, and this one is no exception, is they're increasingly hard to find. And the values of Vipers over the course of the last, say, 2 years or 2.5 years, they've basically like doubled in price. So you used to be able to pick up a Gen 5 for in like the, geez, I mean, some of them were as low as like the low 70s and stuff like that with really not bad mileage. And now, good luck finding one for that price now. They're just incredibly hard to find. As we know, they stopped making these several years back. But man, there's just something special about being in one of these. Like I said, it's not comfortable, it's not super refined, but it sounds good and it really looks good. Now, as weird as this may sound, the Gen 3, even though it made like 50 more horsepower, actually to me doesn't drive quite as good as the Gen 2s did. I didn't really like the way that the Gen 3s drove, but I actually kind of like the way this one drives. It the clutch pedal and everything, yeah, it's heavy, but it's still fun to drive, and I really like it. It doesn't feel cumbersome. And listen to that V10, listen to it. Oh yes, there's just something about driving a Viper that just makes you smile. And everybody around you, they all see the car, and there's something about these cars. They just have a lot of soul to them. Yeah, they're not perfect, I get it, but they're still a lot of fun. And that about does it for my review of the Gen 2 Viper. Still absolutely love this car. Like I said, it's not perfect. It does have its flaws, but sometimes that's what makes cars a lot of fun to drive. It's the soul of it, and this car has plenty of it. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below, guys. Super windy out here today. Love to hear it, and I will catch you on the next one. So until then, RacerX.